G'day YouTube. Just thought I'd do a video of this serving shelf I made for my wife. We have an outdoor entertaining area and I had this sort of window that backs onto it, and I thought I'd create a shelf just to serve food and drinks on. Just thought I'd do a quick video explaining how I did it, what materials I used, so you can do something similar yourself at home. It's just a piece of hardwood I bought from Bunnings. Cost me $57. It's been stain varnished. I've sanded it with the orbital sander, little Bosch portable thing, a multi-cutter, and you use a medium disc to start and then work up to a fine, sanding lightly between coats by hand. With this bit of timber underneath joined to the bricks, it's just treated pine, just cheap stuff, which I've stain varnished. I've got to do a bit more to it later. Where you can see that wood filler, there's a screw going into a wall plug into the brick, and that secures that. It's one at either end. There's also screws going down into the cement on the bricks. There's 3 screws there. There's 2 pieces of wood underneath and one going into the window frame on a 45-degree just to give it that stability. You could pretty much jump up and sit on this and it won't move. Those holes are filled with wood filler. You just buy the closest colour you can get. You can even mix 2 wood fillers together to make a closer colour. I wasn't fussy. I just had, this is what I had in the shed. I'm happy with it. It looks fine. Again, that screw into the window frame wasn't really necessary, but I wanted to make absolutely certain that the thing wasn't going to snap off. You can see I've cut out the end of the bricks there, so it's sort of, oh, there's the food area. You can see how it works. I've cut out the edges there into the bricks. Now this bit here, this was a bit of fun. I had to cut that into the angle of the brick so it would sit flush, so that bit of treated pine would actually sit flush on the brick. So I had to work out that angle and chisel out enough just to get the circular saw in and cut it on the angle all the way along the timber, and that way that timber sat nice and flush on that angled brick there. If you'd have just, well, you can see yourself, if the angle wasn't cut in there, there'd be a big, probably 1.5 centimetre gap there right along the brick. I didn't want that, so I did it that way. There's a number of ways you can do that. That's the way I chose to do it. You could chisel the whole thing all the way along. I just chiseled enough just to get the saw in and then sawed it with the circular saw on an angle. You can see there with the finish, it's had 3 coats of stain varnish. I made a stuff up on 1 coat and I had to start again, so it sort of had 3.5. The way you would paint that is you start along the front and paint that. This is oil-based stain varnish. Paint the front and the sides, and on the edges you get all the bits off. As long as when you're painting along, don't get any build up on that edge. Keep brushing it out so it's nice and thin, and then do the flat piece last and go from left to right or right to left in one motion, and do it fairly quickly, brushing out your brush marks along the way or you'll have problems. It takes about 3 hours to dry. You can wait, or you need to wait 3.5 hours before you recoat. You probably want to check with your directions on the tin. Depending on which brand you buy, it might take a little bit longer, a little bit less. If you're a professional, you can sort of modify that a bit yourself. You can probably do it a little bit quicker if it's a hot day or whatever. If you used stuff to heat the paint up to dry it quicker, then you can go over it quicker. Otherwise, just stick to the standard drying times on the tin. I use the Cabot's stain varnish, which is really good stuff. The other way you could do it is you could use a exterior 2-pack marine varnish or varnish stain, which would be quite a little bit tougher than the oil-based, a little bit more expensive, and probably a little bit harder to get a good finish. So I'd probably stick with the oil-based if you haven't done this before. As far as with the painting goes, just remember to lightly sand with some fine sandpaper, like very lightly between coats. Just get off any bumps or any sort of muck. You might find a bristle if you're using a new brush stuck in the varnish. You want to get all them off by the final coat and just slightly sand over the whole thing between coats. It will get shinier every time you apply an additional coat. the orbital sander I used was a Bosch multi-tool with a sanding attachment with a fine disc on the final sander. Again, I hand sanded in between coats. I only used the multi-tool to get it all dead flat and nice over the wood filler and stuff like that. You can be pretty rough with the wood filler putting it on. It doesn't matter about edges and stuff. You sort all that out with the orbital sander very, very quick. Anyway, that's the shelf, and hope you can utilise this yourself in some way.